Welcome. Good morning and welcome to First Parish in Brookline. Welcome back, whether you've been here for decades or has just joined us. And a very warm welcome to those who are here for the first time. We are so glad you are here with us today. It is very good to see everyone this morning. I am Michelle David. I'm one of the worship associates here at First Parish. Our senior minister is the Reverend Lisa Perry Wood. Today, we welcome a very special guest to our pulpit, Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray. Reverend Frederick Gray was elected president of the Unitarian Universalist Association in 2017. Prior to her election, she served as lead minister of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix, Arizona, where she played a critical role in the long-term campaign to end the constitutional violation of Maricopa Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Susan received a Master of Divinity from Harvard Divinity School and a Bachelor of Science in Molecular Biology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She is a lifelong UU who grew up in the St. Louis area and now lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts, with her husband, Brian, who is here with us today, and their son. We welcome Reverend Susan and her family, and we are thrilled to have you here today. First Parish is a welcoming Unitarian Universalist congregation, open and affirming to all. Whoever you are, whatever gift or ability it may be, however you identify your gender or sexual orientation, wherever your life and faith journey has taken you, you are welcome here. Please take a moment to review all the announcements in your order of service. Today, our Parish Vice Chair, Janet Brisher, will highlight one particular announcement.
Hi, I'm Janet Brisher. It's nice to see you all from this vantage point. I wanted to highlight, since Jean's not here, I get to invite you next Sunday after worship service to a congregational conversation. This is a follow-on of conversations that happened last spring, talking about the bylaws around membership and whether we should relook at them. You've all received in the mail some information about that conversation. I just want to highlight a couple of aspects. One is to explore how we want to covenant with each other. One is to think about money and the role of membership. And we're excited to experiment with a new kind of decision-making conversation, which is consensus building. And we feel that we've been experimenting with it at the board level. We feel it gives a little more chance to dive more deeply into differences instead of just yes, no, taking a position. So I hope you'll join us. There's details in your order of service. And as I said, you've received something in the mail. And we hope to see you all next week. And there'll be sustenance not only from the community, but also food.
On another note, at 12:45 today, you are warmly invited to join Reverend Susan in Pierce Hall, where we will have a light lunch and a post-service conversation. If this is your first time visiting with us, or you have not done so before, please take a moment to fill out one of the yellow visitor cards that you find in clear plastic envelope on the back of the pews and place it in the offering plate as it comes around. After service, everyone is warmly invited to join us for conversation and refreshment through the door to Lion Chapel. We encourage both newcomers and long-timers to pick up one of our striped mud at coffee hour to signal particular interest in sharing conversation with others you may not know at all or know well. Welcome to one and all.
Good morning. The following land acknowledgement opened our service the first Sunday of our church year. It is a statement that bears repeating, and we do so today. We are gathered here at First Parish in Brookline on the ancestral land of the Massachusetts people, who lived here for at least 12,000 years before the Europeans came. Their traditional homeland was spread out across what we now call the greater Boston area, as well as suburbs and towns to the west and south of Boston. The name Massachusetts is an Algonquin word, meaning at the foothills of the Great Hills, referring to the Blue Hills overlooking Boston Harbor from the south, which was a sacred and ceremonial area. A community of Massachusetts people continue to live in the area of Ponkapoag, also known as Canton. To the south of the Massachusetts are their traditional neighbors, the Wampanoags, and to the west, the Nipmucks.
Our theme this month is our second UU principle, which calls us to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. This principle asks us to be learners, to understand the history of the people and places where we work and live. Each of us has a responsibility to confront the past in a thoughtful and intentional way. It isn't enough to recognize the indigenous peoples on whose lands we are meeting without also recognizing the colonization and trauma that has been experienced for generations of indigenous people throughout the United States. Indigenous people are still here, and their lands are still occupied.
And now come, my friends, into this beloved and sacred space, and let us worship together. Let us open our service this morning by rising as you are willing and or able, and join in singing our opening hymn, number 368, Now Let Us Sing.
At this time, I would like to invite Michaela Cody, Nathan Frisa, Eliza and Cody, and Emily Cherry to come forward. Michaela will light the chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith the world over. As she lights this chalice, please join me in our unison affirmation printed in your order of service, in Spanish and then in English. Nos entregamos y nos comprometemos a caminar juntos como congregación, prometiendo con mutua fe cuidarnos mutuamente y deleitarnos en el amor que permanecerá entre nosotros. We give ourselves one unto one another, covenanting to walk together as a congregation, promising faithfully to watch over one another and to delight for love to abide in our midst. Each week, we also light 2 candles of peace and hope, each candle representing a different space on earth that we want to lift up and remember this morning as a sacred encounter with the world. Today, we remember 2 places we especially hold close in the service and through the week ahead. After each candle is lit, we will speak the word of peace in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. Peace, salam, shalom. Our candle of peace is lit for Brazil, where indigenous leader Paulo Paulino Guazarara was ambushed and killed last Friday by a group of 5 loggers working illegally in the Amazon reserve he spent much of his life protecting. Members of the Guazarara indigenous group have been pleading for protection from loggers invading their land. This murder is one of a string of losses for Brazil indigenous communities as miners and loggers make more and bolder incursion into indigenous territories. Unfortunately, Brazil President Jair Bolsonaro has said that Brazil indigenous reserve should be opened up to commercial exploration. We pray for a peaceful resolution and protection of this national treasure. Peace, salam, shalom. Our candle of hope is lit for our nation, where the U.S. Census Bureau report that 36% of citizens aged 18 to 29 voted in the last year midterm election, jumping 60 points since 2014, when turnout was about 20%, and easily surpassing any midterm election since the 1980s. Turnout has also increased sharply among adults aged 30 to 44. While turnout among young adults still lag their elders, last year's election marked a clear break from 2 decades of disappointing turnout among our youngest voters. May this trend continue. Peace, salam, shalom.
Now it's our turn. I'd like to invite our young people to come forward along with Sue and our guests. All right, young people, I know there are some of you in the crowd, so come on forward. All right. Good morning, all. Oh, let's try this again. Good morning, all. Good morning. There we go. Okay, so we have a special treat today in worship, which we're going to, just like last week, we're going to have our time for all ages, and then there's going to be an anthem. Okay, so we're going to stay where we are seated, and then we are going to go out, and we're all going to stay together today, okay? So when we leave, we're all going to be together in Pierce Hall, okay? So just so we know what's happening next. So I want to start by asking all of you young people a question. The food that you eat, where does it come from? Colby, what did you say? Okay, so Colby, Colby's not going to take the bait. Okay, so Colby's saying that it comes from trees and animals, which is partially true, right? So we get food from the world, right? Trey? Okay, so we also get food from places like stores. So the place where we most often see food, right, is where? Where do you most often see food? In your fridge, right? No, that's exactly right. Most of us see food in our fridges, right? But does it start there? Like, does your fridge grow that food? No, right? I mean, you might have a really fancy fridge I don't know about, but most fridges, right, don't actually grow the food that we eat, right? So that food comes from somewhere else. So let's take it one step back. So where do we get the food right before we put it in the fridge? Thoughts? Does anyone grocery shop with their parents? Okay, yes, we have some grocery shoppers. So before it was in your fridge, most often we buy that at a store, okay? Store, let's think of store in a sort of a broad way, right? Because it might be a store, it might be a convenience store, it might be a Whole Foods, it might be a farmer's market, right? There are lots of places where we might get food. But that food comes from somewhere else, right? And that's farms. One of the things that's really true about the world in which we live is we use things all the time, right, that we don't know where they come from. We eat food that we never really see where it's grown. Is that true? How many of you in the last, say, 3 months, right, so since school started, have seen food growing somewhere in the ground? Not a lot. That's true. That's true for most of us. The only reason I see food growing is because my wife insists on planting things every year that she then gets too busy to tend, which forces me to grow plants very badly. Like I'm a bad grower of plants, okay? So if we depended upon me to feed our family, we would be in a sad state, okay? There would be no food in my family except for maybe like arugula that you can't kill. We would only eat arugula in my house, okay? And then it might not taste great because I don't always know when to take it out of the ground. All of this is to say that we, particularly where we live here in America, experience food as something that gets made for us far away and gets brought to us. And then we buy it, and then we eat it, without really knowing where it comes from. But one of the things that's true is that people grow food all over the world. And the fact that we don't see this is part of like a really complicated story about how we come to have food, right? But there are lots of people still in the world who actually grow food, who grow their own food, and who grow the food that we eat, right? And so part of what we want to do is we want to learn where all the things that we use come from so that we're connected to sort of the broader ways of providing for ourselves. So what we want to do is we want to find ways to figure out where our food comes from so that we can value the people who grow our food, so that we can think about what they need so that we help them thrive just as they are helping us thrive. Part of that means that when we're going to talk today, when we leave, we're going to talk about clothes. We're actually going to talk about where our clothes come from and how clothes get made as a way of learning about all the really important people in the world who provide us for something that we absolutely need, which are clothes. So next time you open your fridge, okay, when you open the fridge, who actually goes into the fridge to eat food? Yeah, okay. So anytime you want a snack and you go to the fridge and you open the door, I want you to think about where that might have come from. And then, if you're really curious, I want you and your parents to try to explore where a food comes from, okay? So now, for our anthem, I want us to be, some of you are prepared to sing, and so in just a second, if you're not already up, you'll get ready to sing. But the song that we're going to hear, you might not actually understand a lot of parts of it because it's in a language that most of us don't speak, but we're going to learn a little bit about that when we're all together in chapel later. It's about corn, okay? And so I want you to be very attentive. I want you to listen with your ears and with your eyes at our guest to hear this song about corn, okay? Is everyone ready for that? All right, excellent. Take it away. just a quick announcement before we sing our kids out. Any of our 8th or 9th graders who are in worship, you are welcome to stay in worship. And then the rest of us, so if you're in the 7th grade or below, we are all going to go out together to Pierce Hall. So, all right. Now we're going to, yeah, there we go.
Now we'll enter into a time of prayer followed by a time of silent meditation. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. This is a prayer for one people from the Congregational Accompaniment Project Handbook. Spirit of life and mystery, known by so many names, make us mindful of the deep weaving of life that unites us. Awaken us to abundance, the dawning of another peaceful day far from the drums of war. The senses of our bodies that let us greet the grace of the earth, the homes that shelter us, the food that sustains us, and the love that binds us across time and distance and trouble to those who live in our hearts. Show us the path still set before us to follow, the vision that pulls us on, of a people truly joined in the beloved community where our differences don't divide us and our longings bring us closer, where wealth is shared, where none are impoverished, and where we live lightly on the earth in gratitude, in reverence, and in joy. All this we ask this morning, trusting in the love and connection offered by this community, blessing all of our joys, holding close all of our losses and our sorrows. May all find compassion and healing. May all feel held and have peace. Amen, and blessed be. Please join me in a moment of silence.
I have two short readings this morning. The first is from Shane Claiborne, from his book, The Irresistible Revolution, Living as an Ordinary Radical. Shane writes, "Don't choose issues, choose people. Fall in love with people. Build relationships of love and friendship across boundaries of suffering and marginalization. Then you won't have to worry about which cause you need to protest. Then the issues will choose you. For it is our love, not our rage or our arrogance, that counts. And from the author, feminist, pleasure activist Adrienne Maree Brown, from her book Emergent Strategies, Brown writes that right now we are in an imagination battle. Brown says some imaginations give us borders, give us superiority, and give us race as an indicator of ability. Brown says she often feels trapped inside someone else's imagination and must engage her own imagination in order to break free. Here ends our readings.
Please rise as you are willing and able, and let us join our voices in our hymn of preparation, number 1010, We Give Thanks.
Hello, First Parish in Brookline. What a joy, what a great joy it is to be with you all this morning. I've been looking forward to this visit for some time, and I'm so glad that this day is here. I am grateful for the ministry and the leadership that this congregation offers in our larger community. It is a gift to be here with my fantastic colleague, Reverend Lisa. Thank you for welcoming me, and I'm just so, I just hold you all in this shared ministry, this new ministry that you are building. I hold you all in my prayer and in love. I'm also grateful for the hospitality of your fabulous staff, and had a chance to meet and work with Lacey Adams and Keith Kirchhoff for the fabulous music, and to Michelle David, who is a member of the UUA's President's Council and works with me in that role. it is just wonderful to see the leadership of this congregation. Ann Gilmore and I have been working on General Assembly in Providence that's happening in June. So there's just so many leaders in this congregation. My dear colleague, Eliza Blanchard, who is here. I don't know if Mary Helen Gunn is here, but I want to lift up her ministry as well. And we are joined here with members of UUA staff, specifically staff from the Stewardship and Development Department, and I want to lift up Reverend Lauren Smith, who's here, who's the Director of Stewardship and Development for the UUA, and our President's Council. There are a number of members. If you all from the President's Council are willing to wave your hands. So President's Council members are Unitarian Universalists from all over the country who are especially invested in the health and strength of our movement as a whole. And so it is wonderful to have welcomed them here in Boston this weekend and to cap off our weekend with worship here with you all in Brookline. You know, one of the best parts of my job of being your UUA president is getting to visit our congregations. This is the part I love most, because our congregations are the lifeblood of our religious tradition. And when our congregations are strong, our faith thrives, because it is here, in these rooms and in the Sunday school classes, where lives are changed, where children are nurtured, where our hearts and our spirits grow in depth and wisdom and generosity. It is here where lives are saved. And I know this because my own life was saved by the Unitarian Universalist congregation where I grew up outside of St. Louis, Missouri, Elliott Chapel. You see, when I was a young kid, my family was in a lot of turmoil. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but it meant that my home wasn't a place of peace or joy. But my church community was that place of joy and love, and it nurtured in me hope and a sense of possibility for my future. It ministered to me when I profoundly needed it, and it saved my life. Our congregations can be places of transformation in small ways and in large ways. And when they are communities dedicated to mission and vitality, they unlock possibility and hope in people's lives in ways that can make an untold difference in the conditions of our own families and in the conditions of our larger communities. And I see you all here, right here at First Parish, embracing this kind of ministry. One grounded in mission, one focused on developing leadership within and beyond your congregation. I see this in your ministry with the Quechua community in Bolivia, in your ministry to children and youth and families, and in your anti-racism work, and your immigrant justice work, and in your burgeoning focus on climate justice. This is all so important because one of the things that I've found as I've traveled and visited congregations all across the country is that when our communities embrace mission and have an understanding of a calling that is about more than just serving themselves, these are the places where strong leadership, commitment, and courage develop. But here's the thing about mission. It's both internal and external. Mission is about the way we nurture spiritually vital, relevant communities that welcome everyone of all ages fully, welcoming our pain, welcoming our struggles, welcoming our joy and our gifts. And mission is also fundamentally about answering the call to love and justice beyond our own walls. These are the ingredients, this sense of mission that's both about the depth of the spiritual community and the commitment beyond. These are the ingredients of congregations that have the capacity to make measurable impacts in people's lives, in the lives of their members, and in the wider community. This importance of mission is why one of my very first priorities as UUA president was to clarify the mission of the UUA and to put congregations at the forefront of that mission. So everywhere I go, people ask, what is the UUA and what does it do anyway, the Unitarian Universalist Association? Well, our mission is threefold. Number one, to equip congregations for health and vitality. Number two, to train and support leaders, both lay and professional. And number three, to advance our UU values in the wider world, amplifying the collective voice of our over 1,000 congregations. And you can see the impact of the UUA's mission in resources like our hymnals and our religious education curriculum, including Our Whole Lives Comprehensive Sexuality Curriculum, which is saving the lives of young people all over this country by teaching the importance of consent, agency, sexual health, and the beauty of the spectrum of gender identity and sexual orientation. This is a life-saving gift that we provide as a collective faith. And we see the impact of the UUA's mission during times of ministerial transition, with interim ministry and ministerial settlement tools, as well as credentialing religious leaders, ministers, religious educators, to ensure that we have the ministers and the leaders we need, not just for today, but for the future of our faith, as well as the support of your New England regional staff, which is here to coach and connect and companion you as a congregation. And then very importantly in this moment, with the increase in climate disasters, the UUA's Disaster Relief Fund has been helping congregations and individual UUs and their community partners recovering following storms and fires and floods from California to Texas, from Florida to the Caribbean. All of these ways that we are holding and caring for one another and the health of our faith as a whole. And it's all possible. All of this is possible because of the covenant that our member congregations make to one another. The UUA is the embodiment of the covenant our congregations make to each other. It is the promise and financial support of our congregations that allows the UUA to be a partner with you, to produce the resources that serve all of our congregations. And you, First Parish in Brookline, you have been an honor congregation for over 14 years, giving to the UUA the full ask that is made of your congregation financially. You are among one of our most consistently generous congregations, and I am deeply grateful to you for your commitment to this faith. Thank you. Thank you. Give yourself a hand. I see you clapping. It is no small feat, and it matters so much. And one of the things I like to remind people is that when you give to the UUA, and this is as a congregation, it's a line item in your budget, it's a substantial one. Remember that when you're making that gift, you're not making it to Boston. You're not making it to this separate organization. You're actually giving it to your sibling congregations all across the country. Congregations in Mississippi and Missouri and Indiana and California and here in Massachusetts. You're supporting a network that holds all of our communities in times of need and crisis and challenge and opportunity. So thank you for the ways that you embody the covenant of this collective faith and nurture the health of our whole movement. I am so grateful. And it is my hope, as UUA president, that we are an increasingly strong and effective partner to you all in the prophetic and pastoral ministry that you are nurturing here. Because these times that we are living in, both nationally and globally, are exactly the context in which we need to realize how important our liberating faith is. A tradition that holds the inherent worth and dignity of each and every person as central. A tradition that values the practice of democracy, the values of justice, equity, and compassion. a tradition that values truth and science as core values. We only have to watch the daily news to know how deeply important this is right now. Two things are clear to me. This is no time for a casual faith, and this is no time to go it alone. We need to be in stronger relationship if we are to fight the forces that are undermining all that we hold dear. This is a critical moment in history, and as Unitarian Universalists, we are being called to demonstrate our faith more powerfully and boldly. Now is the time to embrace more fully the deepest expression of our theology, and in particular, our Universalist theology. Universalism teaches us that no one is cast out, that salvation is not individual but collective, and that the way we live this faith out loud is by developing greater courage, and in this moment, taking more risks for the principles of justice and equity for all people today in this life. Now, this is not only a deeply universalist message, it's also a deeply humanist one. For ours is a faith that is not concerned with the hereafter, right? But with the here and now, and the conditions of our lives today, and the conditions of the lives of our neighbors. And yet before us, we see xenophobia, anti-immigrant fervor, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, white nationalism, sexism, racism, transphobia, the climate crisis, economic disparity, poverty, lack of access to health care, attacks on people with disabilities, voter suppression, gun violence. I wish the list were not so long. I wish the list were not so long. But all of these are threatening the lives and the well-being and the safety of our neighbors, of our children, of our loved ones, of our own communities, of all people. It's important to know that in this long list, to understand that the practices of dehumanization, the practices of exploitation, whether of people or of the resources of the planet, are not, cannot be separated. They come from the same moral and spiritual corruption of colonialism, conquest, and violence. And we too must be honest that our own universalism and our own Unitarianism have been shaped and steeped in colonialism. And this is especially important as we prepare to gather for our General Assembly, the national gathering of delegates from all of our congregations in June. We do this every year, but this year we are gathering in Providence, Rhode Island, and it will be the time of the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the Mayflower, for whom the descendants of this tradition arise. Now, there is something deeply life-giving and liberating about a theology that says whatever happens to one of us, whatever happens to me happens to you, whatever happens to one of us happens to all of us, that we are in this together, that we are part of one human family. But it's also true that our Universalist forebears understood their faith within the context of Christian and European supremacy. Now, this supremacy was codified by papal bull known as the Doctrine of Discovery. Is this history you all know? How many of you know about the Doctrine of Discovery? Some of you, okay. Well, let me just share a little bit of this history. So 1400s, by papal bull, the Doctrine of Discovery was established. And this doctrine said that any land not occupied by Christians was available to be discovered and claimed in the name of Christendom. And it established that the people, the pagans, the non-Christians, savages, they were called, were to be enslaved and conquered. It posited that indigenous people were not human and did not have souls. This doctrine formed the foundation of the European conquest of much of the globe, including the land we occupy today, and the insidious practice of human slavery. And it continues to operate, as you heard this morning, it continues to operate in the ongoing theft and exploitation of indigenous lands and resources. It continues to operate in our system of criminalization and the cruelty against immigrants. I share this history so that we may remember that our faith too is not pure, it's not perfect, and it's certainly not ahistorical. And that we too still have work to do to liberate ourselves from the spiritual corruption of notions of superiority, supremacy, and exceptionalism. This is why the work of dismantling a culture of white supremacy in our own faith and in our congregations and in our country is so important. Because the ways in which the exploitation of people and the resources of the planet continue are detrimental to every single one of us. And they're detrimental to our children and the future. None of us are unharmed by these doctrines of separation. None of us are unscathed by systems of exploitation, even though their impacts can vary based on our identity, but none of us is free or unharmed from them. And that is why we need all of us, every single one of us, to build a new way. And it's one of the reasons why Shane Claiborne's words resonate so deeply with me. Don't choose issues. I outlined all those issues, right? It's really not about the issues. Don't choose issues, choose people. Fall in love with people across boundaries of suffering and marginalization, for it is our love, not our rage or our arrogance, that counts. Claiborne's words remind us that it is love that breaks down the barriers of separation and division. Love that reminds us of our fundamental interdependence. Love that calls us to see the fullness of one another's humanity. Love that is an antidote to arrogance and to rage and to greed and to dehumanization. And when I speak of love, I do not mean a passive form of love, but a courageous one. And consider this, the word for courage, the root of the word is cœur, meaning the heart. The root of the word courage is the heart. Courage is heart strength. It is the power of love to not be stopped or daunted by fear. Love that is the seed and the foundation for the imagination that we need right now. So much is on the line. And that is why we are called to live our faith out loud, to bring our bravest, our boldest, our most courageous, and our most loving selves, to love the hell out of this world right now, because there is a whole lot of hell happening in people's lives. We need to bring that courageous love into the streets, into our congregations, into the halls of government and power, into the halls of our workplaces, and into the voting booth. Because we are 12 months away from what is most critical election in our lifetimes. You will choose your candidates as individuals, but as a movement, I propose that we you the vote. Now, what do I mean by yeah? What do I mean by that? We you the vote. Well, out in the wider community, Unitarian Universalists are known as the people who show up. right? Out there, some of you all have yellow shirts. A lot of our congregations show up in yellow shirts, Side with Love shirts. That's how we are known. But I want to challenge us over the next 12 months to not only be the people who show up, but the people who get others to show up and turn out and mobilize the vote. We have the opportunity, we have the ability, we have the power to show what it looks like for those who ascribe to a faith of love to challenge the forces of hate and division. What happens in November 2020 matters. It matters to every single one of us. It matters to our children and our children's children. And what we start doing tomorrow will begin to write what happens on that day. Okay, we can't wait till November 2020. What we start doing now will shape what happens that day. So from now until the 2020 election, the Unitarian Universalist Association will be rolling out a comprehensive, multi-tiered, association-wide strategy that it is designed to be accessible to Unitarian Universalists everywhere. The UUA's organizing strategy team will be collaborating with movement partners as well as UU organizations, statewide advocacy networks, congregations, and individuals to help UUs grow and sharpen our skills for faith-based electoral organizing. We believe that we can make a difference all over this country and in every single community. We also believe we can make a difference in key places like Wisconsin and Arizona and Pennsylvania because there are so many UUs in those states and they are positioned in urban areas and rural areas and suburban areas. And we have a needed faith voice to bring. I am tired of ceding faith language to the right and to conservatism, right? I'm tired of that. As Adrienne Maree Brown describes, we are in an imagination battle. And some imaginations give us only fear and scarcity. Some imaginations can't think of a world without militarized borders. An imagination focused on winners and losers, extraction and wealth. But as religious people, we are in the business of cultivating the spiritual imaginations of people. And our Unitarian Universalism imagines a world not of fear and division, but one of love and justice, one of possibility and abundance, one of interdependence and interconnection. Now, I know many of you may already be doing this work, but it's time to bring it up a notch. And it is time to partner more directly with directly impacted communities, to turn out the vote and to talk with people who no one ever talks to and who believe that their votes don't matter. Those are the places where we need to partner to organize more effectively. And I just want to be clear that as Unitarian Universalists, this is not political. It has political impacts, but it is not political. It is fundamentally faithful, moral action because we hold democracy and the right of all people to have a voice and a vote as part of our 7 principles. And democracy is being threatened every single day with stronger voter suppression efforts. And the most effective way to fight voter suppression is to mobilize people to vote. This is about democracy. This is about the inherent worth and dignity of all people. This is about the interdependence with our creation and climate justice and protecting the future for our kids. And if we start right now this fall with voter registration efforts and finding those community partners to work with, then when 2020 begins, we've already begun to build some of that muscle of knocking on doors, of talking to our neighbors, of making phone calls and turning out the vote for the issues and the values that we care about. The success of this campaign will require both financial support and dedicated leaders because we want to be able to put organizers on the ground to help our congregations step up their work in this time. And I am grateful that this Sunday, your collection will benefit UU the Vote. Thank you, Lisa, Reverend Lisa. Thank you to all of you. You have a way to support this campaign today and its impact across the country. Imagine what it would mean if 50,000 Unitarian Universalists turned out 500,000 new voters. Imagine what that would mean. To get 500,000 more people to know that their voice mattered and needed to be heard. Our voice and our values and our ability to show up matters right now, and it is needed. We are small. We are a small religious community, but we are mighty. As Cornel West likes to say, we punch above our fighting weight. We need this mighty love and this spirit-centered courage right now, today. These are difficult and dangerous times. And one of the challenges is that in times of change and disruption, there's actually a tendency for individuals and institutions to withdraw and grow fearful. There is intention in the chaotic political environment we live in. It is meant to make us despair and grow weary and feel exhausted. We have to fight back against that. There's too much on the line. Right now, we need audacious leaders and bold communities. Right now, we need vision. We need vision for what's possible so that we don't give in to the fear and the rhetoric of fear and division that is sweeping our country. We need audacious communities that are willing to show a new way forward, one that is life-giving, life-affirming, and justice-centered. And this is exactly who our congregations are: life-giving, life-affirming, justice-centered communities that counteract the forces of greed and division and fear that threaten our humanity and our children's future. Our ministries matter. And I believe that when Unitarian Universalists live our mission and our values boldly within and beyond our walls, that we are one of the most powerful forces for good in our communities. Only together with mission, with courage, with love and deep commitment, and with deep and abiding hope can we be the people that we are called to be. And we are being called. I'm grateful, incredibly grateful for this honor of serving as president of your UUA, this faith that raised me up and that I love. And I know that I cannot do what I do, and the UUA can't do what we do, and we can't be a stronger partner with our congregations all across the country without your support. I'm inspired by what we are already doing, by what you are already doing. I'm so excited about this new climate justice task force you all are starting, by the work you're already doing, and that your sibling congregations are all doing. We have been getting ready for this moment, my friends. It is my prayer that across our faith we are both investing in deepening our spiritual community, strengthening our capacity to care for one another and our children, to share an abundant and overflowing love with one another and with everyone we come into contact with. And that we are also deepening our own commitment to act in solidarity for justice and to nurture a more courageous expression of Unitarian Universalism. May we keep answering this call. Amen. May it be so.
Our offering this morning will be given to the UUA UU the Vote 2020 campaign in support of voting rights, election reform, fighting voter suppression, and democracy. Please give as generously as you can. You can also text your donation. You can text Vote Love, one word, at 51555. This offering will now be gratefully received. If you are visiting First Parish for the first time today, please feel free to let the basket pass you by. We are so glad to have you with us today.
For all that you have so generously given and all that we have received, we say thank you.
The mission statement expressed the deeply held values of a congregation, a shared vision of their purpose for being together. A good mission statement for a congregation, says Reverend Fred Hammond, should empower every member to participate in the fulfilling of that mission. The most senior to the youngest person should be able to participate in the mission statement being achieved. The current mission statement of First Parish in Brookline, which you will find every week on the back of your order of service, was adopted by our congregation in May 2015. Please rise as you are willing and are able and join in reading our mission statement. Called by love, sustained by a community committed to justice. We strive to be a welcoming, diverse, and loving congregation that nurtures spiritual growth for individuals and families, celebrate multicultural community, and work together to demand social justice, dismantle racism, and care for our living worth. Thank you. And now let us join our voices in our closing hymn, number 1017, Building a New Way. Please join me in our unison affirmation as Reverend Lisa extinguished the shadows. We enter
And now please take the hand or touch the shoulder or elbow of someone near you for our benediction.
Dear friends, as we leave this sacred circle, in the midst of all the tumult and turmoil of our days, may we keep our hearts and our spirits open. The precious gift of life, the miracle of creation. May we wonder and marvel at its beauty. May we kindle more joy, more love, and more song into our hearts and into our days. May that joy nurture in us love and strengthen our hearts with courage. May we be led out in peace and may we give back love. Amen, and blessed be.